Seems to be no end in sight for the energy crisis in the country. Eskom is scheduled to implement stage 6 blackouts this afternoon yet again. But Cape Town has so far managed to avoid the stage. eNCA's reporter Lindsay Dentlinger joins us now from the mother city, and Desan Thalthia is checking on power cuts and effects in eThekwini. Let's start perhaps with you, Lindsay. We know that for the city of Cape Town, they've at least been able to be a stage lower in most instances. If we're on 6, they would be able to get on 4. But for the rest of the province, it's still been very difficult. They would have experienced the load shedding, particularly on stage 6 with the rest of us. How are they coping?
Well, morning, Mufundo. Many frustrated commuters coming into town this morning, not really feeling the effects of the lighter load. I must point out that currently the city of Cape Town is on stage 4, as is the rest of the country. No indication yet this morning as to whether Cape Town will be avoiding stage 6 later today when that gets implemented, or in fact whether during the course of the day we will move to a lower stage. So most of the city's customers and those who are supplied by Eskom here in the city, around 10% of the city's customers are supplied directly from Eskom, waking up this morning to stage 4, and most of them highly upset about what that has meant for them this morning, having to get small babies awake and fed in the dark, having to cook on open fires, and especially those who are supplied directly from Eskom. To them, they say the stage doesn't really matter. Either way, they've been without electricity for large parts of the weekend, and what annoys them even more is they say they have no warning as to when the power is going to go out and when it might come back on again, and so they've been without power for hours over the course of the weekend. But here's some of those I managed to nab a little bit earlier as they were making their way to work and onto other business here in the city this morning.
Load shedding make my life a disaster, because I don't have electricity. Since the load shedding, like in my electric box is not 000, it's just empty.
Where do you live?
In Idaville, number 16, Mystic Club. And I have a small baby. I have to ask by my neighbors for water because I must making milk. And I must iron my clothes and I must wash myself. Now every time I must put on water outside. I mean really now. And there is electric on my box, but it's not even a 0, as I told you, it's just blank.
So have you had, how much load shedding have you had this weekend?
As I told you, it's blank ever since.
And do you think there's a power problem perhaps?
I don't have a power problem. It's load shedding who give me a problem, and what about the other people?
And how's it impacting you getting to work this morning?
I have to work in the dark, buy candles.
Very frustrating.
I'm very frustrated because what about my baby? And not about me, what about the other people?
It's affecting us about like when he come back power, he affect the TVs, everything, he damage the stuff there at home.
Yeah, and so this morning when you came to work, was there load shedding again?
Yes, it's coming 6 o'clock load shedding this morning.
And how does that affect you coming to work?
There's a cold water, we wash the cold water, so it's affecting us, that thing.
All right, Lindsay, you know, it's honestly very difficult, particularly for new mothers with infants. I mean, that was quite sad to realize that it becomes difficult just to even boil the water to make formula for the kids. Perhaps let's rope in Desan now. Desan, the situation in eThekwini is somewhat similar, but also different in one respect, because in this instance, Eskom has exempted eThekwini as far as, and this relates to the floods. How long can they continue like this, and is there a possibility of them extending it to other areas that were affected by the floods?
Mfundo, I use this term loosely now, but I know that there's been a lot of envy when it comes to eThekwini's position at the moment on load shedding and the fact that we've been exempted for these past few months. But the part of the conversation I'm going to have now with Maxwell Mthembu, the head of eThekwini's electricity, is around how long that reprieve is going to last for, and obviously the reasons behind that. Maxwell, the glaring question right now is how much longer are we going to be able to be exempted from load shedding? I know it had a lot to do with damaged infrastructure.
Thank you, Tassen, and thank you to the viewers at home. Tassen, we must start from the beginning. We are not actually exempted from load shedding. We had a disaster in eThekwini in April. So that disaster actually never came to an end. By the time we're trying to survive and come out of it, another one hit us in May. So that means we had two disasters coming in eThekwini. Now, we lost between 700 and 800 megawatts of power at the time. That's where we're trying to survive or recover from up to now. As of today, we still don't have more than 200 megawatts of power. If we compare June or July as last year at this time. So we lost more than 200 megawatts. If we look at the 200 megawatts, it is an equivalent of what load shedding is today. That means that since April flooding, we have been actually on a severe load shedding compared to anybody else in the country. Yes, it's true that we look like we're exempted, but like you were saying, you're not using the word exempted because we're not exempted. The issue is that we've written a letter to National Control and to ESCOM explaining our situation. And we agreed with both National Control and ESCOM that we are going to be out of load shedding for now. And actually, we're busy now with the schedule because we are also concerned that we cannot, as a eThekwini, not participate in load shedding just to avoid the collapse of the national grid. We are going to participate in load shedding.
So the question is then, Max, how will we be able to accommodate the fact that we have damaged infrastructure, but at the same time we also don't want to compromise the grid?
That is our point of discussion with ESCOM, that a lot of our substations actually bypassed a lot of protection. That means we cannot actually physically and in any way do load shedding. Now we have to look at other substations that are now limited in number, where we can now start to do a new schedule of load shedding, which we are busy compiling. We believe that by the 15th of July we should be done, and we're aiming, if things go well, that on the 1st of August we're going to start participating with a particular way of load shedding, just to make sure that as much as we're struggling as we are, but we also participate in helping the national grid in South Africa.
Is that not going to put the rest of our infrastructure at risk here in the city?
We also agreed that it is going to put it into risk, but we also agreed that what we're going to do, we're going to assess the situation as and when we do load shedding. If and when we see that there is any damage happening in our infrastructure, we're going to communicate with National Control immediately and ESCOM. We've got an open engagement with them. So we even put a statement together with ESCOM and National Control to say this is how we're going to be dealing with the matters. Every month we're going to be meeting and assessing our situation. But should there be any damage happening in our infrastructure while we do load shedding, we're going to call each other, we're going to make a decision as and when that happens. So we can't anticipate it now, but we're going to start doing it and see if such things do happen or not.
Max, what is the damage that we're looking at now, and how long will it take before we get to a point where we, like the rest of the country, will be experiencing the so-called, and again, normal load shedding? Not a great word to use.
Yeah, in eThekwini alone, we're looking at about 3 years, because to fix a substation, that's how much time we need. To build, we're like rebuilding our substations anew. Of course, there are existing some of them, but we bypassed is extremely compromised. So we need about 3 years. And the good news is that eThekwini did give us a budget. Our councillors or our council did give us the budget. We're starting now in just of July. We're starting now to go and get the procurement for such, and we're going to be rebuilding these substations. There's a lot of them.
Let me sneak this one in, Max, before we go. What are your proposals for how that revised load shedding schedule would look like in eThekwini?
Let's wait until we see it, which is going to be about the 15th of July. But we're going to publish it to every resident of eThekwini so they can see and familiarize themselves with the new schedule. And we're not going to use the old one. So the old one is going to all gone. It's gone now. We can't use it. There are substations that we're going to exclude. Totally exclude on load shedding, because we cannot do load shedding in any way. Those are just temporary substations like Maranridge. So the people in Maranridge who suffered for 3 weeks or so without power, now they're not going to experience load shedding at all for the next 3 years, because they have to redo the entire substations. But it's not the only one. I'm just mentioning that because it was the most severe one, where we, after all the flooding that took place, we also had the substation getting bent down to ashes. So we're now going to be rebuilding from scratch. So there's no way we're going to touch the substation. But there are also others who are similar to it that we're going to be excluding from load shedding. So people must just wait for us. On the 15th or around that date, we're going to give a new schedule.
Are you going to have good news for us, Max?
I hope so.
Well, what I'll take away from that is that that load shedding schedule will have to take into account that the infrastructure here is obviously still damaged, which means then it shouldn't be as bad as the rest of the country. But that's interesting. It sounds like eThekwini will be back onto the load shedding schedule within the next month or so.
All right, Dessen, thank you very much for that update. That's our reporter, Dessen South in eThekwini for us. And thank you very much to Lindsay Dentlinger, who's in the mother city for us. Now, still to come.